Hi guys, hope you're all okay. Welcome back to the channel. Thanks for joining me today. This is part one in a series of videos on the Retevis RT3S, which is a new DMR dual band radio that's come out from Retevis. Okay, so in this video I'm just going to do an overview of the radio. We'll just go through some of the main features and settings. We'll have a look at the menus inside it, and we'll look at programming as well as what else you get in the box. So this is the radio that's in front of me. It's the RT3S. So this is a dual band radio from Retevis. It uses the Tier 2 standard protocol, and it's compatible with other Motorola Motor Turbo series radios using standard encryption, so it's compatible with any other analog two-way radio and any other normal DMR two-way radio, and you've got the option there to migrate between digital and analog quite easily. As you can see, it's almost identical, well, it is identical to the TYT MD380 and Retevis RT3 radios. In every single way, the same form factor, very similar layout inside, which is quite nice. This radio isn't completely alien when you get out the box, like when you switch to another brand. It's nice to have something to sort of go off. If you know how the MD380 works or the Retevis RT3, then you're not going to have any issues with the RT3S. So we'll just look at some of the main features of this radio. So it's a dual band radio, and it supports 136 to 174 MHz on VHF and 400 to 480 MHz on UHF. So it's nice to have another dual band radio added into the mix. For those who have got the MD380 or the RT3, you'll know that they're just single band UHF or VHF. So my MD380 here is UHF. This Retevis RT3S is dual band VHF and UHF. It does have GPS, so there's two versions of this radio, the one with GPS and one without. So mine does have GPS, which I'll come to later in the video. It uses time division multiple access, or TDMA, which allows several users to share the same frequency by dividing the signal. By dividing the frequency into two different time slots. It has fully upgradable firmware on the Retevis website, which I'll come to in a little while. It has a feature called Lone Worker, so if the user of this radio doesn't interact with the radio for a preset period of time, for example like 10 minutes or 20 minutes, a pre-warning tone will be triggered, signalling that it's time for him or her to reset the timer by using the radio in some way, so by pressing the PTT or adjusting the volume. If the user still doesn't interact with the radio, an emergency call will then be initiated between the user's radio and others on the same channel. So once the radio wearer activates Lone Worker, they're reminded to check in every 5 minutes or every 10 minutes by pressing the push to talk or changing the volume. So checking in lets other users know that everything's okay. So if they're in an environment where there's danger, then this is quite a handy feature. And if the user doesn't check in or doesn't use the radio, it'll automatically transmit an emergency alert that help's needed or help may be needed. So the radio's microphone stays engaged until help arrives, letting others hear what's happening in the area. So this way it protects the user's personal safety. So for example, on shop watches, if someone's involved in an armed raid, or someone has an aggressive customer, or a security person has a bit of a confrontation, this can be triggered, and the microphone will open so other people on the frequency can hear what's going on. So quite a handy function there. It has encryption, single call, group call and all call modes. It's analog and digital combined, so you can switch between analog and digital in the radio quite easily. It's got remote kill, remote stun, remote activate as well. You can store 3,000 channels in this radio. It's got promiscuous mode, it has an emergency alarm, it has Vox and a timeout timer, just the usual functions there. The RT3S has two side buttons which are programmable, and of course the PTT, and you can program these side buttons in the software. I'll cover that further down. You can store 10,000 contacts in this, and you can import CSV files, so you can import the DMR contact database into this radio. It has 250 receive group list, 250 zones, 250 scan lists, and 3,000 channels. And there's a function in this called record as well, which I'm going to come to in a second. So just some comparisons between the RT3 and the RT3S. So we'll pretend my MD380 is an RT3 there, and we've got the RT3S on the right. So the frequency difference, as I've already covered, this is dual band VHF and UHF, whereas the RT3 is just single band. The RT3 can only hold 1,000 channels, where the RT3S can hold 3,000. Power output is the same, so high power is 5 watts, low power is 1 watt, and the battery is the same as well, the 7.4 volt 2000 milliamp hour battery. GPS is optional in both radios. Firmware is upgradable in both radios, but the RT3 doesn't have the record function, where the RT3S has 8 hours of record function, which I think is quite handy. Just some other bits on software, manuals and firmware and things like that. The Retevis Resource Center has software and downloads for all its radios, so just simply go to the resource page for the RT3S, which is in the description, and you can download the usual manual in multiple languages, the USB programming cable driver, the radio CPS or co-plug programming software, and firmware updates which are released periodically. Okay, so we're just going to have a quick look at the menus on this radio. So I'm not going to go into tons and tons of detail, because all this information is available online, but I'm just going to go through and show you what's in the radio. So if we click on menu on the screen there, we've got our contacts. So you've got your contact list there, which you can go up and down. So I've got my talk groups programmed into that. You can add a new contact, and you can manually dial a contact from there as well. We've got scan for selecting our scan groups, and you can scan through various groups in there. You've got zones here, so you can create a new zone, or you can just look at your zones you've got in. So for example, I've got GB7MR there, which is my local repeater. I've got DMR simplex, so we can go into that zone, and then you can actually scroll through the channels. And we've got analog repeaters in there, so you can actually look at the channel list and delete channels in option 2 there. You can add a channel, or you can just turn the zone on. We've got messages, so you've got an inbox, you can write messages, you can send quick text, and you can see your sent items and drafts as well. So you can create quick text items in the programming software, so that'll basically allow you to send a pre-programmed text message. We've got call log, so we've got missed calls, answered calls, outgoing calls, and then we've got record here. So if we click on record, we've got basically recordings of all the conversations we've had. So in a minute I'll actually test that and show you how to use it. In fact, what we'll do, is we'll go to DMR simplex, and we'll just put a call out, M3HHY test. So we just put a call out there. So what we'll do now is we'll go back to call log, we'll go to record, and we'll click on that and play it.
M3HHY test.
And you can see that was recorded, and you can look at the destination ID, the source ID, the date and time it was transmitted, the duration of it, and you can delete them in there as well. So that's quite a handy feature to have that record in there. I quite like that. It's not something you see on a radio often, so yeah, really nice. We've got utilities here, so we've got radio settings, so you've got talk around settings, tones and alerts, power, backlight, squelch, intro screen, keypad lock, LED indicator, Vox, all the basic. If you look at record there, that just turns record on and off. We've got all basic settings in here. You've got channel mode, memory mode, things like that. Quite straightforward. We've got radio info, so you've got your DMR number, the firmware version, and then you can program the radio manually by going into these settings here. You can select your RX frequency, your transmit frequency, you can name the channel, timeout timer, CTCSS, color code, slot, all those things there. So this is your promiscuous mode, where you can actually go in, insert a channel, and you're good to go. And then finally we've got GPS settings there. I've got GPS turned off in the CPS software at the moment, so I'm going to leave that there. But you can transmit and you can receive your GPS coordinates. You can turn that on and off on a channel, and you can turn it on and off on a zone within the programming software. And when it's enabled in the software, you can turn it on and off from the radio. So yeah, I'll do a video further down the line on GPS. But yeah, that's the basic menu layout on the radio there, so quite simple. And again, if you're used to using DMR radios such as the TYT MD380, the Retevis RT3, even radios like the Alens HD1, you're not going to have any issues finding your way around the menus on this radio, because they're all quite similar and quite straightforward once you have a bit of know-how on what you're doing. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll just have a quick look at what you get inside the box with the radio, and we'll just look at settings, we'll just look at the radio itself, the speaker mic port and buttons and things like that, and then we'll move on to programming. Okay, so this is the box the radio comes in. You can see we've got some information on the front there. Got some technical specs on the side. So we've got the frequency coverage. We've got the power output and things like that. We've got some more things on the side here just to tell you a bit about the radio. But we're all interested in what's inside the box. So on top we've got a really thick, chunky user manual. So this is an English manual. It is pretty good English as well, and it basically tells you everything you need to know. It goes through every single setting and feature on this radio, from straight out of the box down to programming, down to how to use the radio. Really detailed manual. As you can see, it's quite thick, and that's something that's nice to see on these types of radios. Usually you get quite a flimsy, thin manual, but this basically covers everything. So if you're not good at programming, if you've not used DMR, then I would recommend this. It's purely on that manual. It's basically going to tell you everything you need to know, and if you actually sit down for probably an hour, have a good read through it, you'll have a decent understanding of how to work this radio. So yeah, quite simple and straightforward. Quite impressed with that, to be honest. On top there we've got the radio itself, which we'll have a look at in a second. We've got the belt clip there that just goes into the back of the radio with a couple of screws. We've got our programming cable there, the Retevis programming cable, and the software driver for that is on the Retevis website. We've got our power adapter there that goes into the wall, and for those who are in the UK, depending on what country, and you may need an adapter, but like I said before, if you've got these Chinese radios knocking around, then you're going to have thousands of these. So yeah, and they're easy and cheap to pick up anyway if you haven't. We've got the battery pack here. So it's the 2000 milliamp hour 7.4 volt lithium ion battery. The contacts on the back for the charger base, and then we've got the charger base itself, which is actually identical to the TYT MD380 and the Retevis RT3 charger bases, so quite similar and quite straightforward. We've also got the antenna here, so this is a dual band antenna. You'll notice it's thicker than the standard MD380 or RT3S antenna. It's got the spring coil on the bottom there because it's dual band, and that just screws onto the top of the radio. Okay, so you can see the radio itself. Battery just clips onto the back like so and locks into place, and it's got a release catch at the top there for taking it off. And then of course the antenna just screws onto the SMA connector on the top there. And that's basically set up. Your belt clip just screws into these holes on the back like so, which come in the box, but we won't bother with that at the moment. So yeah, we've got the on-off and volume control on the top. We've got the channel and zone select knob there, and we've got a LED for transmit and receive. So it's red and green. We've got our programmable buttons on the side, and then we've got the PTT switch in the middle of those two buttons. On this side we've got the speaker mic port. So your speaker mic and programming cable just plugs into there. It's a standard Kenwood style adapter on there, so you're not going to have any issues with that. That just gets covered by a rubber seal. On the back, as I say, we've got the battery terminals, we've got the screws for the belt clip, and we've got the battery release button. And all we do to turn the radio on is turn that encoder on the right, and you can see we're good to go. We've got the keypad. It's quite simple on the front. You've got a numerical keypad, and we've got confirm and decline buttons there. So really straightforward, quite simple. Nothing that's going to be too confusing. Okay, guys. So we're just going to look at the programming software on this radio. So I've gone to Retevis Resources Center on their website, which there's a link to in the description below. And you can see we've got all sorts of software here for USB drivers. We've got programming software. We've got firmware updates. So all we're going to look at is we're going to go down, and we're going to look at the RT3S. So we'll click on RT3S. We've got RT3S firmware here, but we're going to look at RT3S, and that will basically start the downloader for the RT3S programming software. So what we'll do is, what you need to do is download and install that software and open it up, and it looks something like this. And for those who are familiar with programming DMR radios, you'll know what this is all about. If you are unfamiliar with this type of software, then head over to Radiosification, the YouTube channel run by Ben. He's got some really good detailed videos on DMR programming software. He'll go into detail on what various settings and features mean. Certainly been a help to me in the past, so if you're unsure on how to program DMR radios and this software is completely alien to you, then look at his channel and all will become clear. Okay, so all you need to do is plug your radio in on the USB port on your computer and then plug the programming cable's other end into your radio, and then in the programming software click on Program and click on Read Data. And once the data has been read, you've got your code plug open. Now, for those who are starting out from scratch with this radio, there won't be a code plug in it, or there won't be a code plug in the radio that's any use to you. So you're going to have to start from scratch. So I've been sort of building one over the past few hours on here. It's unfinished at the moment, but it's enough just to give you a basic understanding of what's involved in programming these radios. So we've got menu options down the side, and these open up little windows here, and you can just close these off at any point, and any information that you enter into them will still be saved. So if you do a load of settings in here and close it off, everything's still going to be saved, so you don't need to worry about that. So we've got basic information of the radio here, so you can select the model that you've got. So I've got the 400 to 480 and the 136 to 174 dual band model there. If we look at general settings, we've got all sorts of alert tones, scan settings, and we've got the radio name here. So if you have a DMR mark ID, you can put your call sign and radio ID in there, like I've done. And we've got basic settings here that you can just run through. As I say, I'm not going to go into tons and tons of detail on this because Ben's done some really good videos, and this video will be about an hour long if I did. So yeah, we'll just leave that menu there. But that's the second menu. We've got menu items, so you can actually select how long your menu is open for on your radio, and you can select what actually goes into the menus. So if you want to give this radio to someone like commercially, and you don't want them to be able to mess with any of the settings, you can just uncheck all these boxes and there'll be no menu for them. So basically what they'll have is a radio with a set of channels on that they're on, and that's all they can do, so they can't mess anything up. We've got button definitions, so we've got the side key and 1 and 2, and the basically have a short and long press. So for side button 1, I've got power select on short press and scan on and off on long press, and then for side button 2, I've got record playback and record on or off. So if I press that side button once shortly, it'll play back the latest QSO in the radio, which I think is quite handy. It's got to have some use, hasn't it? We've got one touch access here and quick key contacts access, so you can just have basically a contact on speed dial. You key in their number onto the radio, and you're good to go. We've got text messages here, so you can put pre sort of set text messages in. So they're your quick text that you can just send out. So at the end of a QSO, if you wanted to, you could have that. You could send one out saying hello. You could send one out on DMR simplex calling channel saying CQ M3 HHY should you want to. Simple as that, quite easy to do, then you just access those from the radio's keypad. We've got privacy settings here, which I haven't done anything with. You've got digital emergency system there, and you can add and delete the systems that you set into place. We've got our digital contacts here, so basically all I've done is talk groups up to now, but we've got our talk groups set in there, so you have the contact name, the type of call, the group ID, which is the group number. So for example, talk group 9 local is call ID 9, and you can select a call receive tone there. You can delete and add these as you want, and you can see there you can actually import and export these. So you can import a CSV file into here, and you can import up to 10,000 contacts. We've got our digital RX group call list, so I've just got one for GB7MR in there, and I've got one for DMR simplex. We've got our zone information, so this is basically like scan banks in a scanner. We've got GB7MR, and we've got all the channels associated with that added in there to channel A. You can set 2 channels, so if you've got a lot of talk groups, you can have a group A and a group B. It just makes it a little bit easier to digest. We've got DMR simplex here, so I've got the 6 DMR channels in there. We've got an analog repeater group, so I've just got one repeater in there up to now, which is my local one. and then we've got analog simplex, which I've just put the 2 meter calling channel in for now. But you can add a lot of channels into these zones. We've got our scan list, so I've got GB7MR set up so you can scan a bank. So if we enable scan on that list, it'll just basically scan all the talk groups on GB7MR. And then we've got channel information, so you can see I've got all the channels for GB7MR programmed in. So we've got talk group 9 local, talk group 1, 2, 13, 2, 3, 5 and things like that. And as you can see, the only thing that changes in these is the channel name and the contact name. The actual frequency, color code and slot all stay the same. So you can see there it's quite easy to put in a DMR repeater channel. And if we look at analog, we've got GB3MR there, which is an analog channel, so the digital side of things is blanked out, and you can see we've just basically put the name, we've got the frequency, the repeater output and input, and then we've got the CTCSS encoded tone there of 82.5, and that's basically how to put a repeater in. And then for an analog simplex channel, you can see everything's the same except we haven't put a CTCSS tone on, and the receive and transmit frequencies are the same. So yeah, I'm not going to go into tons and tons of detail on programming, guys, because it is complicated. I'm not going to deny that. You can see we've got GPS at the bottom there, which I've just been having a play around with. But yeah, it's really something that you need to sort of figure out yourselves and get your heads around. Okay guys, so that's sort of a basic overview of the programming software for the RT3S. I'm not going to go in tons and tons of detail about how to write a code plug for these radios, because it's something that you sort of need to learn yourselves, because it is quite long-winded, but once you get used to doing it, you can bang them out in no time at all. So it's something definitely worth getting your heads around. As I say, it's not a video on how to write code plugs. It's just basically an overview of the actual software. And as you can see from what I've shown you there, the software is quite straightforward as DMR programming softwares go. Once you've written your code plug, all you need to do is click on Program and write that data to the radio. I'm not going to do it because I've made changes in this, but you write the data to the radio and it will let you know when it's done, and then you can just simply unplug the radio and unplug the cable from your computer. Once you switch the radio on, the code plug that you've written will be in the radio itself. Don't forget, guys, you can also edit the code plug from the front panel of the radio, so you can delete, add things, you can change things, talk groups, slots, color codes, things like that. So you're not solely reliant on code plug software for some of the operation on this. You can actually edit things out in the field, which is handy. Okay guys, so I hope you enjoy that. Another good radio from Retevis, as the sort of home comforts of the MD380 and RT3 series of radios, but with those extra little features. I really like the record function on it. I think it's definitely a step forward, and it's good to have should you need to refer back to anything. So yeah, as with all the radios I've reviewed lately, guys, I am going to get round to testing them all. It's just time, so I am going to test them, so stay tuned for that. There will be another part coming on this where we'll do some long range and short range testing and see how well this radio performs. Okay, I'll leave that one there. If you have any comments, suggestions or questions, drop them in the box below and I'll get back to you. If you enjoyed this video, then make sure you click the thumbs up button, and if you haven't already subscribed, then make sure you click the subscribe button as well. If you want to buy this radio, the link is in the description below, along with the link to the programming software and firmware updates and all that stuff that you need should you want to get your hands on this radio. And other than that, I'll say 7-3 for now, guys. Thanks for watching. Cheers.
As you can see, this is a demonstration of the record feature. So as you can see, all I clicked was the program side key to activate the recording of the last QSO that was in the radio.